And the kind of the way that it came to me with I love watching sci-fi and all that kind of stuff. So I kind of see it this way, that God has a secretly encoded message that he is embedded within you. That while he was forming you and fashioning you, he also kind of threw in some messages and coding there about what he wants to do with you. Well, we want to say hello also for those of you that watch us online. Chris Green. My name is Chris Green, and our Urban Life Church family is right here. And we just always take this opportunity just to say hi to everybody. In fact, I want you guys to look over that camera right there and say hi to everybody watching online. Hi. Say, I'm always doing something new and different. You're like, we're going to be on video? Yeah, I always have to do that. I do these things to encourage you in that we are for real when we say that this is us. This is not the Chris and Carol Green show. God wants to use a church family, a body of believers to reach out to this community. And all of us have our part. And so we're doing everything that we can to encourage you and build you up so that you become even more comfortable in the calling that God has upon you. That way, we won't end up becoming one of those ministries or one of those churches where everybody's fighting for their chance to get up in the pulpit and say something. Because when you're comfortable in the calling where God has you, you don't ever see some other position or some other place as something I need to aspire for or that I need to do. You're comfortable with where God has called you. And we can tell you, my wife and I, that we never aspired for this. We certainly never aspired for this. We were serving in our home church over the youth and the young adults. I was associate pastor, administrator, also working with media and outreach. And I was really, both of us working in our gifting and our calling, and we're quite fine there. Absolutely, quite fine there. Most of our ministry took place behind closed doors, behind the scenes. I was very, very rarely up speaking in front of the people, maybe 3 or 4 times a year out of the entire 52 Sundays in a year. So most of what we did was happening behind the scenes or just with the youth and the young adults. The majority of our ministry took place in our home. We met every single week with young adults in our home, in our living room and dining room and all over the place. Everybody would pile up in there, and we'd share and talk and answer questions. And then, of course, that led to many other times of us talking to people beyond just that weekly meeting. Sometimes, especially young ladies would stop by, needed to talk with my wife because of what they were going through. That's been our history. I was thinking about that this week, of how part of our history, and that's what we see is going to happen here in Harrisburg, but not just with Chris and Carol, but with you. Part of our history was that the Lord always was bringing into our lives the people that other folks had already given up on them, or they just didn't want to be bothered with them because their problem and their issue was just so persistent. Because a lot of times in church, people like to have the easy issues or things get solved real fast. Come up to the altar, as they say, after the sermon, have prayer, hands laid up on you, and the problem solved, it's over and done, and we move on to the next thing. And my wife and I always found ourselves dealing with the people who, even after they came up to the altar and after the hands were laid up on them, they still were battling with clinical depression. We had one young lady we took in who had tried to commit suicide. Another young lady we took in, she was literally had been just walking through the halls in her high school in a daze. She didn't even hardly know where she was. And we didn't know what we were doing as youth pastors. It wasn't like we were some clinical counselors and all that kind of thing. We was just a mom and dad trying to help out the teenagers in our church in whatever way we could. And if that meant letting them stay in our house over the weekend or over a period of weeks or months. We've had people stay in our home up to 2 years living in our home. And we didn't do, even though we did quite a bit of talking, it really wasn't just the talking. They later told us, they said it was just living in an atmosphere where there was a mom and a dad, and I had brothers, I had siblings in the house, because in all of their cases, they did not have either a mother or a father or neither. And in the cases of some of the young adult women, they had children, but they did not have a husband and had not had any relationship with, or very good relationship with their fathers. And so for me and Carol, it wasn't a lot of sitting down, counseling with people. It really was just living life. And they'd stop by the house. And sometimes we didn't say anything. Sometimes I remember one young lady, she'd just come in the house and she'd lay down on the sofa and go to sleep, because she said it was the only place I could find any peace. And so it was just good to just have some place I could go and take a nap and not have no chaos and everything going on in the house. So it wasn't a lot of counseling. It wasn't a lot of talking. And I'm saying that to you so that you know that God's going to use you in everyday life. You don't have to say, I'm being called into the ministry and I'm going to counsel people and I've got to have this stack of knowledge in my head on the Bible and all of that. God will just use you as, like he did with us, just a mother and a father, just opening up our house, provide a haven, a safe haven for some teenagers and young adults. One young lady, the one in particular who had tried to commit suicide, and we definitely didn't know what to do with her, but we just let her come over to our house and she just slept. She just literally just slept through a whole weekend. And eventually she began to just kind of talk a little bit. And we didn't know what to say. We didn't know what to do. I mean, talk to somebody that just tried to commit suicide. This is stuff the professionals deal with. And we're asking the Lord, what do you do? What do you say? We didn't know what to say or what to do. The Lord just said, just let her be. Just leave her alone. She later told us that she remembers waking up and just hearing the sound of Mom praying. And what that did for her, just to heal her. Because Carol would just go off in her room. And it wasn't that Carol was, doing the big spiritual prayer thing. When my wife prays, she just goes around the house and she's kind of just humming. She's just humming while she's working or washing clothes, and she's just kind of humming. And they had come to know that about her. When Mom is praying, she kind of sings and hums to herself. And that just healed her. And she just woke up and she heard Mom praying. And so it's not going to be some spectacular thing that you and I do. It's just everyday life.